Kawanatan, right? And but I prefer to go by Daichi here, so you can call me Daichi.
Hi, Daichi.
Hi, Dai.
Just a quick info about me. I've been in the community Singles for Christ for over 4 years now. So just like you guys, I was in the same spot 4 years ago doing my own Christian life program. So I finished last December 2012 too. Um, so before I start my presentation, I just want to ask because I know some of you guys were here last week regarding top 5 loving God, which is the highest Christian ideal. If we rate it from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how much do you guys love God?
10. 11.
Oh, rate 1 to 10, guys. You 11? Okay, good to know. So I guess you listen to the talk, and before listening to the talk, how much did you love God? 11.
11.
So loving God is actually the first of all commandments. It's in Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 5. It says, therefore you shall love your God with all your heart, with your mind, and with all your soul. Now, I'm going to talk about the second commandment, which is loving your neighbor. So before that, how much do you guys love yourselves?
Oh.
From 1 to 10. 1 to 10. No more 11. 10. Still 10?
9.9.
10.2.
9.5. 9.9.
And how much do you guys love your neighbor?
So.
5? See?
5.2.
Passing score.
9.5.
So, Jesus gave the second commandment, which is loving your neighbor. It's in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. Take no revenge and cherish no grudge against your fellow countrymen. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Oh, yes. Yeah, you can. So, loving your neighbor is actually an expression of love that God gave us. So, He loved us, right? So, for us to share that love, we have He commanded us to love our neighbor. So, it's not love if it's not actually sharing to others. So, loving God and loving your neighbor, it's Jesus summed up the whole commandments in these two. So, who knows the 10 greatest commandments?
Okay.
10 commandments from Exodus. So the first 4. I think it's the next one. Okay, so the 10 commandments. First one is, I am the Lord your God. You shall worship the Lord your God, and Him only shall you serve. Second is, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Third, remember to keep holy the Sabbath day. Fourth is, honor your father and your mother. Fifth is, you shall not kill. Next, you shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not covet your neighbor's good. Missing somewhere. So it summarizes loving God and loving your neighbor summarizes these 10 commandments. The first 3 talks about loving God, and from 4 to 10 talks about loving our neighbor. So in Matthew chapter 22, verse 37 to 40, it says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. The whole law and prophets depend on these 2 commandments. So if we love God and if we love our neighbor, doing the 10 commandments is actually an easy task for us. And it's possible to do so. Loving God and loving your neighbor go together. They cannot be separated. Next slide, please. So in 1 John chapter 4 verse 20, if anyone says, I love God, but hates his brother, he is a liar. For whoever does not love a brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. So it's actually a hard task to love our neighbor, right? Whoever our neighbor is. If I say hate this certain person, it's actually me saying too that I hate God. Because God created man in His own image, and for us to say that we hate someone or we don't like someone, it's actually saying that we hate God as well. So these two greatest commandments form the Christian life, is the core of the Christian life. Next one. So the characteristics of Christian love. So when we say love in here, it's more of a feeling, right? But if it's Christian love, it's loving God in a Christ way. Next, please. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 to 8, if we can read all together. Love is patient, love is kind, it is not jealous. Love is not pompous, it is not inflated, it's not rude, it does not seek its own interest, it is not quick-tempered, it does not rejoice over wrongdoings, but rejoices with the truth.
Of all things, endures all things.
Who can do this? Who can do all these things? Next. Okay. So love is patient. To love others is to be patient. We should be slow to anger. We should give ample allowance for the shortcoming of others. Who has patience? You? I can say I have lots of patience. But it's actually, we should also pray for it, that God would give us patience. Example of this is, who drives? If someone cuts you in, what's your reaction? No. So I said, we should be slow to anger. Who hates lineups? Okay. So the next one is, to love others is to be kind. We should avoid an attitude of criticism. We should have a posture and speech that is upbuilding and encouraging. So for my first work here in Canada, I would say they are very nice because they're not really how do you say that? They always give praises when you do a good job. So you kind of know the feedback of your job. So we should have an attitude of that, of bringing others, encouraging them. So next one is, to love others is to not be jealous of others. We should not covet what others have or begrudge another for possessing something we do not have. It does not only apply for material things that people have that we don't have, like phones, computers, cars. It's actually more also with other person's accomplishments. So in the Philippines, they have this crab mentality, right? If someone's on the top, we actually are not happy for them. But we shouldn't take that attitude out. We should be happy for what others have achieved. Next one is, to love others is to not be pompous or inflated or to be self-important. We should be humble and think not of our own importance. We should be conscious of our own unworthiness rather than our merit. So some people are egoistic and excessive self-esteem. So it's next one is, to love others is to not be rude. We should accord and honor and respect one another, praise them if they do well, and console them if they do badly. Here in SFC, when I started, one of the artists have told me that if you wanted to praise someone, do it openly and publicly. But if you want to criticize someone, you should do it in private. And also, to talk to another person in a loving way. So even if you do criticize someone for not doing a good job or something, we should also always say it in a loving way. And I'm trying to do that. Next is, to love others is to not be self-seeking. We should not focus on having our rights met, but focus rather on our duties to others. So the Christian Life program is actually a way of us giving our service. So I think, so giving service to others and our duties to others. So on a Saturday night, who who would want to come here, right? You can just go somewhere, mall, be at home, but being here is actually doing a service to you guys. And next is to love others is to not be quick-tempered. We should master our emotions and feelings. We should be slow to frown but quick to smile. So when something pisses you off, it actually shows in your face, unless you're a poker face, right? You hide it. Or some people have their don't bring me. So and also with body movements, you can actually notice some people if they're not in the good mood, right? Next is to love others is next slide please. To love others does not brood over injury. We should not hold grudges or resentments, but rather be forgiving and understanding of the weakness of others. This I have a sharing, but I have to finish the next because it's connected to my sharing. So the next one is love does not rejoice over wrongdoing and rejoices with the truth. So at work, I think my patience is being tested at work. So I work as a secretary for an outpatient mental health, and so we do have phone calls from patients who needs help, right? If you can't give it right away, you actually feel bad because they need it. It's my patience is being tested, especially when they say not so good things, and if it's not your fault, it's actually it's this. It's not good to say it's the system's fault, but it's a situation. Like you, an example of it is we have one patient. So I went to vacation August and I was away for 2 weeks. So she called in when I came back and say, "Did I miss my appointment? Do I have an appointment?" And I said, "I'll have to check out." So I took the information and then I found out that she did miss her appointment. And she came back to me saying, "How come no one phoned me? How come no one phoned me to inform me that I've missed my appointment? How come no one phoned me to book another appointment?" And for me being gone by that time, I actually, like personally, I can't blame myself because I wasn't there. But I just have to say, "Oh, you just have to talk with your therapist when you come in." And then explain it. So I did explain it to the therapist so that they can have that conversation when she comes in. Then September, she had another appointment, but she was half an hour to 45 minutes late. Not because she forgot, but because there's a problem with parking at Foothills. So if you guys are going to Foothills, the main parkade is actually closed for the next 3 years. So just give extra time to find parking. I tell that to all the patients that calls, but we can actually call every single one of them and inform them because that's a lot of job. And we would want to do it, but we were told not to. So she was late when she gave this attitude like, "How come no one phoned me?" Right? But it's in the news. We can actually say that. We have to think in a good, in a loving way how to respond. Then she had her appointment, and then just last week, she called again. And lucky me, it's actually me who took the call. So, and even, she was saying, "Oh, I missed my appointment, no one phoned me." Even if she doesn't say her name, I actually know her, but still, "What's your name? I have to look you up." And now she gave this argument, "How come you guys don't call me if I have an appointment to remind me?" So I have to explain, we only do calls for first appointments, we don't do follow-ups. And then she goes on by comparing, you're only getting paid by this money, and then my therapist actually getting paid by this money, by this amount of money. She's comparing, and she was saying that, "Oh, it will only take you a few minutes to do a call. Why didn't you do it? You can do 14 calls in an hour. How come you guys don't do this phone call?" But I can't really talk back and explain "Oh, in this clinic we have patients who forgot their appointments," but they help themselves in actually helping themselves in actually reminding their own appointments. So I can't say that because we do have patients who have ADHD who forgets their appointments, but they're trying to come in and see their therapist, but I can't really say that. So I just have to say you should have to talk to your therapist. And the therapist is actually there sitting next to me, and my patient was just like, I have to tell it out. I don't keep it. After a phone call, I share it with the other secretary just to unload that burden in me, so they know like, oh, she's not doing well, or if that patient comes in, we know what to do. We posted a sign actually saying abuse is not tolerated here, but it's actually just for her. Um, so yeah, and it's bad for me to say that I'm actually hoping for her not to find parking for her appointment. It's bad, but I shouldn't do that. So I just remind her again, you have to come in early for your parking. So to love others is to have forbearance. We should patiently and humbly bear insults, injuries, and disappointments without taking counteraction. So I didn't do a counteraction, but I think it's bad to hope that she can come for her appointment. I think I missed this one. To love others is to rejoice in truth. We should always be sincere and honest and tell the truth to one another. So, giving feedbacks, for me, I have this attitude that if you don't do well, like for my coworker, if she doesn't do well in a certain task, I would like to just do it and not give it to her. But that's actually bad, not good, because you're not giving her the chance to improve herself. So I try to give feedback, even it's hard, say, oh, you missed this one, you forgot to put this, or you messed up with some appointment. So, but just do it, say it in a loving way. To love others is to have trust and to believe in the best about other people. You should have a positive attitude towards others, always seeking their good side. So giving others chance to do their work and distribute it. To love others is to have hope. We should have a positive attitude towards life and other people and remain joyful and peaceful under any circumstance. So just have more patience. Pray to God to have more patience. To love others is to have endurance. We should develop an ability to bear things not with passive resignation, but with triumph attitude. So we are able to assume the characteristic of Christian love if we can honestly substitute the word I. Next slide, please. Substitute I for love. So let's read again all together. Nation. I am kind. I am not jealous. I am not pompous or inflated. I am not rude. I am not self-seeking.
I am not quick-tempered.
I do not brood over injury. I do not rejoice over wrongdoing. I rejoice with the truth.
I forbear. I trust. I hope. I endure.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So loving others as Jesus loved. So loving our neighbor is not an option. It is God's commandment. We are to love others as Jesus loves us. So we are not to pick the nicest looking person, the most kind, the popular one, the one who always help you. User friend. So we are not to pick them. We are not to pick the people that we love. God even tell us to love our enemies. So God stated this several times in the Bible. So there's 3 verses. First one is John chapter 13, verse 34. He said, I give you a new commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. Should also love one another. It's actually in the song. One? Can't. Next one is John chapter 15, verse 12. This is my commandment. Love one another as I love you. And lastly, John 15, verse 17. This I command you, love one another. So Jesus took loving your neighbor in a higher plane. We are to love our neighbor as we love, not only as we love ourselves, but as He loves us. So Jesus' love is more on the self-sacrificing, prodigal, and forgiving kind of love. So for sacrificing, Jesus Christ, God in human flesh, gave up His spot to be with God in the heaven. So He came down on earth to experience humility, shame, suffering, and even death. And He endured the pain of the cross because He loves us. So that's His sacrificing love. He did that so that anyone who trusts Him can be forgiven by their sin and have a personal relationship with Him. He did this voluntarily because he's motivated by his love to us. Do you think can we do it? Can we give up our life for our neighbor?
Depends on the
It depends on the neighbor. So I thought, how much do you love your neighbor?
Oh, ma.
Situation.
How much do you love God? You said 10.
10.
So love your neighbor should be 10 too.
10 din?
Yes.
Depends nga.
So another example of Christian love is Jesus washed his disciples' feet. So in Jews' time, in the Jewish culture during Jesus' time, washing someone's feet is actually a servant's job. So his disciples' feet, so they walk long roads, dusty roads, and he washed it. So he's showing an example of his love for his disciples. So he wanted us to be a servant to one another. So that's his way of doing that. So he's teaching us to be a servant to one another. So Jesus clearly commanded us to love our neighbor as he loves us. I mentioned that. So loving Jesus is actually serving. Loving your neighbor as Jesus loved is actually means serving one another. So Jesus commanded us to love our neighbor and as he loves us. My question is, how much Jesus does love us again, other than him giving up his life? What is the extent of his love? So it's John chapter 15 verse 13. No one is greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend. So Jesus said that he's not actually demanding us to give our time. So loving your neighbor is not actually just giving time to them, praising them, being with them, imparting wisdom, and praying for them. If necessary, we should be prepared to give up our lives for them as Jesus did for us. So another kind of love that Jesus showed us is forgiving love. So when he was crucified, he said to God, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And it's in Luke chapter 23 verse 34. So that's another forgiving love, right? Him dying it's actually a way for God to forgive us for all the sins that we have. So our model for loving our neighbors should be Jesus Christ. Let's say we are prepared to do this. Let's say we are prepared to give up our lives for a neighbor. The question now is, who is your neighbor? Me. Thanks. Is it someone who lives next to you? Everyone. So I'm gonna show you a video.
And then next neighbor. Next size.
You will take your life para sa akin. Love your neighbor. Love your neighbor, baby.
Okay, so who've seen this for the first time? Oh, nice. So Jesus was telling a story about the parable of the Good Samaritan, and the people asked him like, who is my neighbor? So he mentioned this story. So those three persons, the first two who passed by, is actually a priest. The second one was a Levite, and the one who was attacked is a Jew. Now the Samaritans and the Jew, they have disagreements for many generations, and the one who helped the Jew up is actually a Samaritan. So Jesus took pains in describing how much the Samaritan helped the Jew. So he approached the Samaritan, he poured oil and wine, he bandaged him up, he lifted him up, he took him to an inn. So at the end of the story, people were wondering, who has been a good neighbor in that story? And instead of the people saying, oh, it's the Samaritan, they said, oh, the one who treated him with mercy. And God is asking us to do that too. So being a neighbor is an active involvement. It's not a passive attitude. He wants us to help out. So be active in helping out our neighbors. The responsibility is placed upon each of us, in every one of us. It's not actually asking who is your neighbor, who is my neighbor. He's actually telling us and making us reflect, am I being a good neighbor to others? So the parable of the Good Samaritan embodies Jesus' teaching on loving your neighbor. He wants us to ask, am I being a good neighbor, instead of asking or finding out who is your neighbor so I could help him, so I could do Jesus' commandment, right? In conclusion, oh sorry, next slide please. There's one more. Our model for loving our neighbor is Jesus Christ. In Philippians chapter 2, verse 5 to 8, have among yourselves the same attitude that is also yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God something to be grasped. Rather, he emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, coming in human likeness, and found human in appearance. He humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. Next one, please. Next. Next one. So in conclusion, loving God and loving neighbor are like the vertical and horizontal parts of the cross. So the one going up, it's our love towards God or His love towards us, and the horizontal line of the cross, it's our love for our fellow countrymen or to our neighbor. So Christian love is impossible without God's grace. You're right. It's actually very hard to love your neighbor, admit it or not. With the nature of our love and our limitations, we are gonna fail with just mere human effort. But if you if you sincerely ask for it to God, if you pray for it that you want to love your neighbor, or how are you gonna be a good neighbor to others, He can help you with that. He will give it to you generously and freely. So Jesus said that we should love one another as He loves us. He loves us regardless of who we are. So regardless of man, woman, Samaritan or Jew, sinner or not, rich or poor, Filipino or not, Canadian, tall or short. He has no discrimination. He loved us. So He did die for every one of us, for us to be forgiven for our sins. And for that, He is a good neighbor to all of us. And to end that, may God be praised.